Hi, I'm just chillaxing right now. Let's take my sweet time to make this video. Let's see if that helps me make a quicker video. Anyway, yes, in this video I want to discuss how it's about eventually happening. Something's going to eventually happen. You can only do so much before you eventually want your end. I guess this is drawing an allusion more to human beings and their motivations more than life, sort of like, life existing. Right? You can say, well, it's only a matter of time before life exists in exactly the same way if it ends. But that's assuming there is a time frame in which we can say this universe ends and begins and will begin again. If it's, say, an infinitely reproducing, universe that can instantly pops out from, say, the universe pops out after this universe ends. So we have to create the boundaries for which we can find the one example that will happen again eventually. So you can find the example and you say, when will this exact example, it's about defining the edges of the example. So say it's about the universe existing and not existing. At that point, you can understand you've created the boundary for which the universe has begun and ended. So once you created that boundary, you can understand, okay, based on this boundary, I've, created. That I don't necessarily know if I've made the right distinctions, and I guess that's another illusion of distinctions. That this is the example I'm making. I've created the boundaries, I've created the example, the beginning, and this is the beginning, and this is the end of the example, which I'm going to use as a contrivance. That's the word I'm looking for, a contrivance of my example of what I'm going to say is going to exactly happen the same way. So if it's about the universe exploding and then the universe contracting, if those are the contrived beginning and end, I can say those are the contrived beginning and end. I can say exactly this is going to happen exactly the same way. Eventually, we can't say when or where, how many universes it may be. It may never exist again, right? And that's not. And this example that I'm using about eventually only applies to motivation in human beings more than anything, and the existent ideas that exist inside of our reality, as opposed to reality, say continually times infinity reproducing. And it's an idea and it's a possibility where it's not something that can be proven to have existed. And even if it does exist, it's something that's beyond our control. We have no control over the things eventually popping out the exact same way. They may do it the next time. If the universe does contract again and explode again, and it may happen the exact same time. But the thing is, I have no context. It almost seems like an amnesia, even though it seems like amnesia. You can't say I didn't exist before then. There was an existence before you had the amnesia. Sort of like I have no context of saying, okay, obviously it didn't exist before because I'm only living now. There couldn't have been a universe that happened before me, right? Because I'm existing now, there's no context. So how can I have existed before? Am I existing and all at the same time? No, it's not that. It's, you're not existing. So how do I have context of existing then when it was exactly the same way? Because I can't remember the context. But then again, if I remembered, it would only be just part of the same old script I'm reading if I recognized it before. There was no beginning, no end. I'm just reading the previous script, which is on both sides of me. And the other one's looking at me, and I'm looking at them. Oh, but no, that stuff can't be proven to exist. Is a practical reality that exists and how the universe constantly functions and reproduces or whatever. It's something that can't be proven to exist, or it's going to be fundamentally functioning over and over again. Things happening exactly the same way, the pieces moving exactly the same way, but we don't realize just how common it can be or how uncommon it can be. It can be something that happens every time, but there's no proof of that, and there's no proof that we're ever going to be able to prove that that exists. That's exactly how it's necessarily working. And if there is, then there's something, if we did know, then there would be some kind of possibility of us changing that. But obviously, knowledge doesn't always mean that you can always partake in, say, interacting with what you know. So it doesn't mean you're exactly going to be able to know exactly, interact with it. Okay, you know that this is, you know the inevitability, but you can't change the inevitability. Like one of those kinds of things. Yeah. Anyway, so what do I want to say other than that? Yes, I was mentioning it's only a matter of time before you get what you want. Like I mentioned, human beings. There's only a matter of time. There's only when it comes down to this, you're gonna save someone's life so many times before you say I want to get my end of the deal. It's a matter. It's how good you are is just a matter of how many times before you say I want what I want on my end of the deal. So you can say it's 4 for this guy, 8 for this guy, 7 for this guy, 11 for this guy, 2 for this guy. and it's only a matter of how many before you get your side. It's going to be reached, and it's inevitability. It's a matter of how good you are, but how good you are is not, I'm going to take the blunt end, say you do this so many times. It's going to be, I do this so many times before I get what I want. So I'm a good guy because I'll do it 10 times as opposed to him doing it 2 times before he wants the exact same thing. He may be more experienced at, say, doing this than that, or what, but then again, it's about the circumstance and motivation more than anything. What you feel like you're giving and then getting on the receiving end. So yeah, so you feel like you're a better person. That's obviously the ego thing, and the ego thing can drive us in either direction. I can feel good for helping someone, or I can feel good for getting what I want in the deal. I can feel good by not going through the deprivation, and I can almost say it's less egotistical to be, to do exactly what you want in a way, as opposed to being the hero, because that's almost overtly egotistical because you want to be the hero, and that just proves the point. Because you want to be the savior, and you want to be the grand master. You want to be the person that saved the day, and you want to use that to stroke your ego, obviously. But I'd say there's a number for everyone. Obviously, you can't say ultimate. What is it? The power corrupts. Ultimate power corrupts all, or something. Whatever the platitude cliche is. Um, you can say there's a number. I guess it goes back to that. But generally speaking, that's the case. You're not going to be doing everything for free because everything does, generally speaking, come at a cost. Um, and generally speaking, we all do have our thresholds. We can only take so much before we say enough's enough. And I can say that can be applied, generally speaking, to a human being, unless, say, they have to give their life for something. If they have to give their life, okay, I'm going to risk my life, I end up dying, or I'm willingly, knowingly giving up my life to save this person. You can say, obviously, if I had more lives to give, it would be eventually, it would be 10 lives before I say, okay, enough lives to save this one person. I want something on my end, or I just say it's not enough's enough, and I'm not going to give any more. So like cats have 9 lives or something. Yeah, if I had more than one life, I'd give up my life even easier. Or if I have only one life, I've reached my threshold. But make sure you do this in return, or something like that. But, if you had more than one life to give, you'd probably say, okay, I'll give you a few of my lives before I say, okay, enough's enough. Or I need to get something on my end, or I just say enough's enough, period. It's not worth anymore. It's just a matter of how many lives you have at that point. But then again, if you only have one life, like we do, or whatever it is, you only have one chance and you end up dying, the one life you had was ended by the fact that something killed you, yeah, then all of a sudden you gave up your life and you reached your threshold. And your threshold was the death. And the death is the ultimate, I guess you could say, threshold, the default threshold, regardless of your motivation. And I guess your motivation at that point was an ego gratification, more than anything. Maybe not necessarily overt, but something that you got out of it to, say, get something that you felt was worth it in the end. But I'd say, ultimately speaking, there's a threshold for everyone before a person says enough's enough, or a person says, hey, can I get a little cut? Can you cut a little deal on my end now, please? It's only a matter of time before you reach that threshold. I say it's just a matter of when and how much in many cases. And it depends on, maybe it's not always money. Maybe it is money. It depends on what it is. Obviously, it can be money. It depends on the goal you have. It's not always ultimate power corrupts all. It's obviously, okay, you have money, but what am I going to use it for? It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be corrupt power. It just means it's going to be something that could be for the good. I'll do it. Okay, yes, I have an amount, but the amount I'm going to use for something that's good. It doesn't really matter. Ultimate power, money, or whatever it is. Whatever the cliche is, you know what I'm talking about. It's only a matter of, it's more about what you intend to do. Or, someone, bribes you to do something evil. It doesn't necessarily work in that circumstance. It works more in the circumstance of, I'd say, motivating, like the examples I used, of more motivation of what you intend to do with something as opposed to being blackmailed, or there's only so much suffering. I guess that you can say that there's only so much suffering I'm going to go through before I say enough's enough. And obviously I have no choice, so I have to do what this person says. I guess that's something that really exists, but that existence doesn't really exist because, you can only suffer so much before you die, so that really doesn't exist as an example. It exists as a thought experiment, but doesn't exist as an example. And since it doesn't really exist, the thought experiment sort of reaches a dead end, because it's, like I mentioned before, a contrivance that doesn't really exist in reality, because there's only so much you can take in the end anyway, physically speaking. Yeah. Yeah, so there's only so much you're willing to do. When I say, even though it doesn't apply to the universary, um, something that can't be necessarily proven in many circumstances, say something that's to do with the universe keep popping in and out of existence, or anything like that, or whatever it is, applying it to those physical circumstances. It's more about human motivation and sentient motivation and sentient experience based on circumstances of imposition. I'd say there's only so much we can do based on the there's only so much we can do, only so much we can take. There's only so much we're willing to do or take or experience or endure before we say enough's enough, and we say we got to do something about this, or I got to cut the deal short. Otherwise, no one's really winning here. It's sort of like the thing with relationships. We're ultimately in the end using each other, and that's what relationships ultimately are. It's a use relationship. It's about finding some use in someone else, and that's how reality works. Um, you use them, they can find a mutual relationship where you can both use each other and you can find use in each other, and that's where the ultimate relationship comes from. I can use you this way, you mutually benefit me this way, we both mutually benefit each other this way, and we can both help each other with our pros and cons, and well, you're emotionally there for me, you saved my life, therefore I'm willing to take more from you. I already have my threshold of friends. I can't take you anymore. There's always a losing side. There's always someone losing. There's always someone suffering, and if once there's one person suffering, it's already enough. We've already said there's already enough. Otherwise, we're just saying if one person is willing to suffer, we can try our best to prevent the most suffering we can, but we've already passed the point of no return. What we can do is prevent suffering from happening again. And if we're willing to say one person can suffer, obviously we should try our best to prevent suffering. But at that point, if we're willing to say this person can suffer, we're willing to say that why not you? If you're not suffering, why not you? Why him? We're willing just to say, why not just put you in his shoes? Why not just everyone? Why not we just say no more suffering at that point? And at that point, if we say one person is willing to suffer, we might as well just say everyone's willing to suffer, because if that person's willing to be put on the chopping block, then everyone is. I've mentioned this before as well. It's best not to have anyone have to be put on the chopping block, to be dismembered horribly or horribly deprived or suffer the exclusion of a certain circumstance where they were being forced to the playground even though they're sick, even though the 4 people had to go, and they had to have all 5 people go, and the 4 well people went, and they end up saying screw you because they had power in numbers and they forced you to come even though you were sick. So someone has to lose. It's either they don't get to have their fun, 4 people don't get to have their fun, or one person gets to suffer horribly because they don't want to go out and they end up horribly suffocating or something. It's about these value equations, and someone's always on the losing end. And if there's one person on the losing end, we're already failing. And you might as well just say, there's one person, why not you or everyone else? We might as well just say no one else. And that's the point I'm making. No one else should have to deal with it. So, yeah, there's only so much. There's only so much we're willing to take. And there's only so much, and then I guess when the ultimate power thing corrupts or something, means that there's only so much. I guess the real thing is not ultimate power. I guess ultimate choice can be kind of obnoxious. You have so many choices, it's hard to make one decision when you have so much power. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make the wrong decision. So that's almost a confusion of the power thing and the idea of getting the power thing corrupting you, even though it's more about difficulty in making decisions and having so many decisions at your disposal because you have the ultimate power in making all those decisions, and being, say, blackmailed because you're almost assuming ultimate power corrupts all because you're going to be blackmailed by someone because they have the amount of money you need to serve a function or something like that. So they're going to blackmail you out of the money you have. And blackmail you to give you this much money so you do some evil thing for them. And then it corrupts you in that circumstance, but you end up using that money for good. So it's about your motivation in the end. So it doesn't really mean anything at the end. That ultimate power corrupts doesn't really have much meaning. It's like dust in the wind. It doesn't. It's weightless, almost assertion. It doesn't mean much. It's about making these confusions between having the power and making the difficult decisions based on your power and having all sorts of decisions to make and the power you have, and the idea that you feel like someone's going to be controlling you like a puppet or something, because they're going to be saying, I'm going to extort you, you're going to have to do this for me, otherwise, since you have the power, I'm going to be the first one to extort you, and you're going to be the first one extorted, therefore I'm going to extort you, and you have to do something evil or something or whatever. Well, I'm going to get money out of you, I'll give you this much money so you do this. Then it's really about the motivation. in the end? What's the intention? What's the motivation? What are you doing in the end? And what's the net outcome in the end that you're accomplishing? So I mean, it all really comes out, and these are these value equations are obviously very difficult to come to, but you know, they're impossible. But we can only do so much, and we can understand an outcome after it's happened, saying, okay, maybe it could have happened differently, it could have happened better, but we're never going to know. And we did what we did, and we could say, I'm content with this happening the way it did. But that doesn't mean it couldn't have happened better, but we don't know. But it was going to happen one way, and it happened the one way it was going to happen because that's the only way it can happen. So that's it. I don't want to go any longer on this. So yes, I think there's a number, at least to human motivation, but it doesn't really matter before you get what you want. It depends on more on the motivation. It doesn't mean ultimate power corrupts all or whatever. It just means it's only before a matter of time before you say enough's enough. Like I mentioned before, we all have our thresholds before we, okay, I'm not going to take this user relationship anymore. I want my cut of the deal. I want a little something in return. It's just a matter of numbers. I'm better because I did it 10 times for you as opposed to 2 times the other guy did it. So it's a matter of just putting a number to it. And you may never reach that number, and that sometimes you never know how a person may have been once they die, after they've died. They seem like a good person, but if they lived another 10 years, they could have been an asshole. Or you wouldn't have seen their real side after they've said they were still nicer than this guy, but you wouldn't have reached that threshold. You wouldn't have seen, oh, he actually has one. If you could bring people back to life, of course. So anyway, obviously I broke my rule again, so oh well. This is an important subject though, and I want to draw a lot of allusions to previous subjects and different topics to bring them all into one. So yeah, thank you. So sorry it went on for so long, so thank you until next time. Like I always, if I have anything else to say, I'll mention it next time or in another video. So thank you until next time, bye.